Hello and welcome to another Travel Risk Management Health, Safety and Security Advisory Tip. My name's Tony Ridley, Editor-in-Chief at travelriskmanagementsolutions.com. The subject of public transport is, again, the assumption that all information and mitigation and management should be outsourced to the managers or the administration and governments associated with public transport. The problem is public transport is one of the highest points of variance globally when it comes to travel. For example, the local administration may have outsourced the buses, for example, to a contractor, and that contractor sees and services public transport in a completely different fashion to that of the country, the individual, and certainly what you're most familiar with. So therefore, payment processes, where you can and can't get off the particular routes, the safety standards, the maintenance of the vehicles, all these sorts of things need to be considered. Now, first and foremost is international organisations think what a laborious and impossible task. However, the public transport associated with 95 to 99% of all transport is actually quite simple and quite easy to implement and certainly monitor. But you should be aware of things such as labour disputes. A labour dispute may in turn lead to a shortage of drivers. There may be a rapid expansion in a developing country, and all of a sudden, 50 to 80% of their drivers are from somewhere else and haven't had time to be inducted, and they were simply thrown behind the wheel of a train, a bus, or a taxi, and now they're servicing you and transporting your key resources. So there's much more to it than simply assuming that, there's buses and taxis and there's trains and things applied. It often requires a degree of insight into how they're managed, much the same as aviation security. And aviation safety is monitored, not just because it's a prolific component of travel, because it's often the most sensationalistic aspect of a crash or a disaster. Everybody loves to think that it's a hazard-ridden industry, but it's never been safer in the last 50-odd years. A recent UN report has dictated or identified that despite some of the fringe users, that air safety is the safest it's ever been, certainly based on the increasing volumes as well. But public transport, buses, trains, pollution, crimes, all these sorts of things really do need to be considered. In some countries, buses are very unconventional. They can be open back vehicles where people simply jump on and off and pay the driver who solicits fees as they're driving along. The passenger or his jockey could be identifying tariffs and people along the road. They're not said bus stops. These are significantly hazardous environments, but again, travellers should not necessarily be using these unless it's either predetermined, they have the experience, or the risk is mitigated. You may have gone to significant lengths and extraordinary means to ensure the health, safety and security of an individual, and then they're simply jumping on a public transport system that is prone to delays or violence or threats and hazards and crashes and all sorts of things. It needs to be included in the overall process. Or you may find that extended travel from an airport or to where your office is located, you simply cannot use public transport. You may have outgrown it. Therefore, your plan and your systems and your procedures need to be modified. And then you've got a business case to put forward to say, we actually need our own private transport. Also, the trade-offs between two. I remember a particular incident where an organisation were considering, had dictated that all of their individuals be met by a town car at the airport and they would be driven in. Now, this particular location had an extremely advanced and sophisticated public train system, an airport express that took 20 or 30 minutes, whereas the driver and the maintenance of the vehicles was about a 45 to 50 minute drive, and there was speed and there was all sorts of variables that could be mitigated. But because the company originated from a first world country where town cars were an accepted practice and they were regulated and they were clean and they were managed and all those sorts of things, the assumption was then extended to the destination in which the traveller was going to. Again, a fatal flaw. So when it comes to public transport, it needs to be an evaluated process. It needs to be part of your travel risk management mitigation, certainly your hazard and threat identification system, and then you need to manage, mitigate and potentially avoid the threats and hazards that people may be exposed to in some circumstances. It's not universal, but you need to know which is relevant, which is appropriate, and which ones you need increased treatment solutions or countermeasures for. So once again, thanks very much for joining us for another Travel Risk Management, Health, Safety and Security Advisory Tip. For more information, please visit the website at www.travelriskmanagementsolutions.com. Thanks and goodbye.